Ladies and gentlemen, in this episode, you are going to hear opinions. And while the podcast is endorsed by Uriah Heep, the opinions of the host and various guests do not necessarily represent the opinions of the band or any of the members past or present. With that being said, let's celebrate the music of Uriah Heep. Welcome to Uriah Heep, the Magician's Podcast. I'll be covering every studio song the band has recorded and every bonus track that I can find. Each week we'll go over a new song from the beginning to where they are currently, and as they keep adding albums, I'll keep adding shows. Let the deep dive party begin.
In the magic garden, some were singing, some were dancing.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Dig Into a Song that was written and recorded by Uriah Heep on the podcast Uriah Heep, the Magician's Podcast. I'm your host, Scott Haskin, and I am very excited to dig into another song off of the album High and Mighty. This is the first official bonus track on the album, and it's interesting because there are two versions of a song that wasn't released. There's the version that would have been potentially released on the album, and there is also the demo version. So like we've experienced on some of the other songs, they included both on the deluxe edition CD, which is really cool. But before we get into the song, I want to make a quick announcement. I want to welcome to the Deep Dive Podcast Network Hawk Binge, which is a podcast based on the band Hawkwind, who until today I had never heard of, just didn't even know they existed, and they've been around as long as Uriah Heep. So I'm looking forward to digging into this new podcast. You can find them. The only place I found them so far is on Apple Podcasts, and just look up Hawk Binge, HAWKBINGE. They're just getting started. They've got a couple episodes ready to go. It's a really interesting dynamic because they've got two guys. One is very familiar with the band, and one has never really paid much attention to them. So it's an experienced one for one person and a completely inexperienced one for another person, this journey that they're taking. So it's going to be really fascinating to see how that unfolds. They got a long way to go. They did a really cool opening episode that kind of laid out the groundwork for the show. And they've got, I think, 3 episodes so far. So they're just getting started, but it looks like it's going to be a fun show. Listen to the opener and then like the first half of the first episode while I was doing some cleaning earlier, and it sounds like it's going to be really fun, and really excited to check it out. So welcome, guys, to the Deep Dive Podcast Network. I'm a great podcast host, aren't I? Can't even speak today. So what I am going to speak about, though, is a song that we have 2 versions to listen to. It's a little bit longer of a song. It's over 5 minutes on the main version. Haven't looked at the demo version yet, so I'm not sure how that falls. But this version is a little over 5 minutes, and it is called Name of the Game. Now, keep in mind that since this is an unreleased track, it didn't get the full polish that the rest of the album did. It has a little bit different of a mix to it. It's very bass heavy, so that kind of drowns out a little bit of the dynamics of the song. But apart from that, it's easily listenable. Just a little bassier than the rest of the songs. So let's get into what would have been the studio release version. I wonder where they would have put it on the album too. I'm not sure where it would have fit best, between what 2 songs. But then sometimes when you add one more song to the mix, it changes the order completely. So not really sure where they would have put it, but in any case, it is listed as a bonus track. So that's where it goes on the deluxe CD. Here it is, Name of the Game by Uriah Heep off the album High and Mighty. Yeah, see, that mix is a little bit bass heavy, and it drowns out some stuff a little bit. But I'm hearing 3 different guitar tracks. So I'm hearing a rhythm track that's following the bass, I'm hearing some really interesting just picking in the background that's creating this really wonderful electric guitar atmosphere. And then we've got obviously the solo that's being played over the top of all of that. It's a really nice blend. Like those tracks are really well mixed together. They really are creating quite an atmosphere. It's a very moody feeling, kind of a little bit dark, it sounds to me. I guess we'll find out the intent when we get to the vocal section, but it just has kind of like something almost that might have fit on Demons and Wizards or maybe The Magician's Birthday. It's just kind of, it creates an atmosphere, doesn't it? So let's see what happens next.
But now she's coming round daily. She's got some big ideas about being my baby. It's a game with a name of love.
Already this woman sounds like a handful, doesn't she? It sounds like he's getting into some trouble here, probably more than it's going to be worth. But we'll have to find out as time goes on. I love the feeling of the lyric. I get the fact that he feels like, this looked like it was going to be cool and maybe it's not. Like this might be more of a thing than I want it to be, but it's good. I love the flow of the lyrics, always delivered so well. And the music backing it up is really nice too, because it really, there was a lot going on before the vocals started and then it backed off a little bit to really give room to the vocals. And that's one thing that I don't mention, I think, enough how good of writers and performers that Uriah Heep are when it comes to knowing when to give each other that time to shine, knowing when to back off in a song to let the focus be on what it should be instead of everybody fighting for space. They're very good about that. Now, whether it was that way in the writing process with different members, I don't know. I don't know how they arrived at the conclusion that they did for each song. But I can say that in a good majority of the songs, there are... When they're fighting for space, it's very intentional. Like when you're doing two different vocals over each other, when the lead singer is singing one thing and the choral section is singing something else, that's very intentional. But it just feels for the most part like, and I have a feeling that a lot of this is Mick just playing for the song, but it really just seems like people in the band know where to leave that room for each other and to let the different parts of the song shine where they need to. And again, that might have been something that caused a lot of arguments. It might have been a lot of negotiating, a lot of, I'm just going to shut up and play. I don't know what was going on behind the scenes, not really relevant. But at the end of the day, when you hear a song like this, everybody could be putting so much into it to shine, but they really back off and let the vocals shine through, which, if you're going to have a song with words, as I've said before, the words should be heard. They should be audible. And it doesn't do any good to tell the story that you're drowning out with something that's trying to enhance the story in by overshadowing it. It just doesn't make sense. So for that part, it's a good mix. I think the vocals cut through nicely, better than they have on some of the other songs on the album. But again, this isn't, this didn't get the same mix and mastering treatment that the others did initially. So, but overall, yeah, I like where it's heading. I like the mood of it. And I'm curious to see what happens with this lady. I want to stop it right here because I want to actually go back, and I'll play that part again. But going back to when the lead sings the word love, listen to what the backups are doing. That vibrato is amazing, especially at that pitch. I love the sound of that. I love that they drag that on past the lead vocal. That's a really nice effect there. And, I say effect, I don't mean effect as in like a chorus or a delay. That's just a vocal stylistic choice, but it has an effect on the song. And I really like that. Heading into the next part, obviously, we've got some good stuff coming up, but that was some nice guitar work there from Mick. I'm kind of disappointed now that I think about it that this wasn't on the album, because there's some really good guitar work that didn't get heard. And that always makes me a little bit sad, because there's not a huge amount of guitar work on this album. So, for one of those songs to have gotten bumped is a bit of a bummer, but it did. And that's where we're at. So it's nice to at least be able to appreciate it now.
Rock and roll, lose my soul, pushing everything and everyone to one side. But when all goes on, she'll still go when I sing with my sweet guitar. When I sing with my sweet guitar. Come on, sing.
Well, it's nice to hear Lee Kerslake play the ride. It's not something he does a whole lot. Of course, we have those classic cymbal crashes on the snare here and there throughout the song. But, playing the crash cymbal instead of a hi-hat here, the way that it's mixed, see, that would be fine. Like, stylistically, that would be a fine choice to make. But the way that it's mixed is really kind of drowning out the vocals. Cymbals often share frequencies with vocalists, and it can be kind of sketchy if it's played this way, how you mix it, because you want the crashes to be noticeable. You want it to be noticeable if you're going to ride on a crash like you would a hi-hat or a ride cymbal. But at the same point, that frequency can really kill vocals sometimes. So it's a delicate balance. I don't particularly care for the mix here. I think it's kind of hurting the song a little bit. But the performance and the writing are just fine through here. I really like what's going on. I think it's a very interesting song. It's kind of getting back to me to what Heep has always been. And so I find it an interesting decision that it wasn't put on the album. But whatever was behind that, I'm sure there were logistical reasons. Maybe it was intended to be a B-side to a single or released as a single. I don't know if it was or not. There's nothing here that tells me it was. So I'm not really sure what was behind it, but I think it's a good song. I love solos like that, because you really feel like whoever is playing a solo, you feel like their arms tensing up. You feel that they're physically bending with the guitar as they're playing some of those notes. And I really feel that on this solo. I feel like Mick really felt this one, and I could just see kind of his body twisting into the solo as he's playing it. That to me is really one of the best kinds of solos. If I can feel that the guitar player was that into what they were doing, or keyboard player, I should say, because, keyboard players can do that too. They tend not to. They tend to be very upright or bent over the keyboard when they play. There's not typically so much body movement as there would be with a guitarist. But in any case, it was a great solo. It's definitely something that I felt came from the gut, and I really like that. I could be wrong, but I thought I heard the faintest hint of a trill in that riff. It sounds like it was there, or it sounds like it was kind of inferred or just played in a way that gave you the illusion that it was there, but I thought I heard a trill in there. Very interesting. But yeah, a great section of the song. Really like the solidity in the band here. I really feel like they're playing very much together. May not have been the case, but, it really gives off that feel for sure.
Pushing everything and everyone to one side. But when all grows old, the chill's still cold while I sing with my sweet guitar. While I sing with my sweet guitar.
I love that part where Mick is playing along with the vocals. I think it's a really nice blend. I think the guitars are slightly loud in the first one, and then they bring it down in the second line, which is kind of interesting. That actually, I think, sat in the mix a little bit better. But I love the feel of it. And I'm also hearing, in this next section, I'm hearing two guitars playing together. One slightly to the left, one slightly to the right, one's higher, one's lower. But that has a really nice feel to it. It's a really nice blend, I think, between the two. The tricky thing, and I can say this as a drummer, when you're using the crash cymbal to be the thing that carries you through instead of the ride or the hi-hat, there's a bit of a trick to it, because you have to be really careful what kind of drum rolls that you play. If you play something that's too long, that takes you away from that crash cymbal too much, then it feels really weird when you go back to using that crash cymbal again. So then you can either switch to the ride or the hi-hat. But if you're out of it too long, now you can play fills that are just snare accents, like what Lee's done here pretty much up to this point. You can also play fills that utilize the crash in the middle of the fill. So you're not, again, straying too far away from that crash sound, and it doesn't sound too strange when you go back to that crash for the verse part. It's just a technique thing, and I'm sure every drummer has their own feelings that would either agree or completely disagree with what I just said. As a drummer, that's where I come out on it. And I love playing parts where you're riding on a crash cymbal. That's actually really nice and can be a lot of fun. But I think personally, for it to really work, you just have to be a little careful with what kind of techniques that you're using while you're doing that. So what Lee's doing here is very safe. He's not getting crazy with the fills. He's just doing some snare accents. Well, he can do that without taking his crash hand off of the crash. He's just playing the accents on the snare with his right hand. You could get away with a couple of double accents or something with your right hand if you wanted to, because you're not straying too far from the cymbal. But yeah, the more you can stay on it, the better you are. Okay, perfect. Those are exactly the kind of fills I'm talking about. See, he's staying on the crash while he's changing up the dynamics a little bit, keeping it interesting, doing something that's fun, but at the same point, he's keeping that foundation on the crash so that you can not, feel too weird going back into the next section after the drum fill. I think also I'm hearing some harmonies in the background. I can't really tell what they're saying, but it sounds like that it's either vocals or it's another instrument, but I'm hearing something in the background. I can't quite place exactly what it is. I'm leaning towards it being like the high harmony vocal that you would normally hear from Heep, but I can't tell for sure because this mix is a little bit crazy right here. We've also got Lee playing eighth notes on the bass drum. And so that's filling up the sound a little bit, although the bass drum is not very high in the mix. It definitely is thickening things up, as it were, because this is a very low end heavy mix as it is. So it's a little bit muddy. I'd like to hear, a little clearer version. Maybe we'll get some clarity in the demo version, although I suspect that we may not. Okay, there were definitely some vocals in there. What they were saying, I couldn't make out, but definitely some vocals. So that's the what did they call it? The alternate, no, previously unreleased version is how this was titled on the deluxe CD. And that makes sense because it wasn't on the album. Some really nice guitar work, but honestly, the last 2 minutes of the song is pretty much the same. The difference that you're getting is a little bit of variation in the bass guitar, and you're getting some drum fills in there that are interesting. Some of them are at a different tempo than the actual beat of the song. But, you know, if you play long enough and you time it just right, then you can land where you should, and it all works out. It all completes itself, as some people feel. But in any case, it works. So you can play fills that are a little bit faster, but as long as you catch back on that one beat, then you're going to be fine. And they were certainly interesting. They weren't anything that threw me off of the song. They were things that I think were very complimentary, and I like that he threw that in there. I think it was very tasteful. But yeah, there was. I feel like there could have been room for some solo work over top of it. Especially somewhere in the last couple of minutes of the song, because it was, like I said, basically just 2 minutes of repetition at the end. Could have been faded earlier, didn't really need to be a 5 minute and 14-second song. But I love the feel of it. There's that part of me that's like contradictory to the producer side of me. So the producer side of me said, make it a 4 minute and 15 to a 4 minute and 30-second song. Just fade it right there. We're not going to miss anything. But then there's that musician side of me and fan of music that just says, you know what, though? I mean, this is like a party, and, you know, not story-wise, but musically, it's just a party. It's a celebration, and I kind of want this to go on all night. So I'm really torn between those two sides of me, and sometimes it's very difficult to be both. And that's why a lot of times when a band has a member who has done producing work or is working as a producer, they don't want to produce their own band, because decisions can be difficult to make. And sometimes when you're writing the music, you're thinking as a songwriter. And then when you have to put on the producer hat, you're really conflicted between what decisions that you want to make. I know that's been hard for a few different producers that are also musicians. So, it's a challenge. So, it's tough. I can't say which one is right. I can only say, here's the decision that was made on this particular version. And whether that was a decision that was made by the people issuing the deluxe edition CD, I don't know, because I've never heard the song before. So I don't know what other mixes might have been attempted or available. It's not listed as an alternate mix or anything. So this might be the only version of it. It may have never been mixed before. I don't know. But in any case, I'm glad they did include it, because I think it's a pretty cool song. I think it's got a lot of cool parts to it. And I'm really curious to see now what the demo version is like. So let's get into that. Here is the demo version of Name of the Game. Well, right off the bat, I'm noticing a couple things. One, so far, I like the mix a lot better. I think it's a little more balanced overall. I love the sound of the guitars. But I'm trying to figure out what's going on with the hi-hat, because I'm hearing a very faint ticking that very well could be a tightly closed hi-hat. And then he's just opening up a little bit for that one, half note. And then again on the snare. So it seems like but it's with such precision. I mean, if that's what he's doing there, he's doing a masterful job of making that work, because it's a very, very precision. But it seems to me like I'm hearing, light ticking like you would have on the hi-hat if he was playing 16th notes. And it could just be in certain spots too. He might not be playing them all the way through. But it definitely sounds interesting. I like the sound of that. I didn't really hear that on the other version. I'll have to go back and listen and see if it was there, and I just didn't notice it. But overall, it sounds much better for this being the demo version versus the unreleased version anyway.
Here comes trouble in the shape of a lady. She started cool, but now she's coming round daily.
I kind of feel like there's a chance that these songs were put on the CD in the wrong order, because this mix is very, very consistent with the mix of the album. So the other one was not. So I kind of feel like this might have been what should be the previously unreleased version, and the other version that we just listened to is the one that was the demo version. I was actually expecting the demo version not to have any drums or bass on it, for it to just be like piano, guitar, and vocal, something like that. But no, this is a full recorded version. So I can't say for sure that that's the case, but I am leaning towards that. Just based on the sound alone, it fits more in with the album than the other version did. So I don't know. I'm not going to say it's fact. I don't know. I wasn't there. I don't have the master tapes. I don't have any way to verify that, but I can say that just from a sonic standpoint, that's what I'm getting out of it.
Now she's so pretty that I have to confess, but no five-star fox is getting me in a mess. Let's buy a ring, she said, go out and get blessed. It's her game and she calls it love. Rock and roll rules my soul, pushing everything and everyone to one side. But when it all grows old, the chill's still cold when I sing with my sweet guitar. When I sing with my sweet guitar.
Well, before we get into the guitar solo here, it's interesting. I mean, that sounds like it's Ken singing on this one, so it probably is the demo version. But boy, the production, I think, is much better than on the unreleased version. So maybe with the unreleased version, they were like, well, it's not going out, so let's just put a rough mix together, and so we have it on file and put it to bed. I don't know, but I can say that this version sounds much better. In fact, the vocals are a little bit better in the mix than the rest of the album, I would say. I don't know. It's hard to say what happened, what caused things to be the way that they are. In any case, it doesn't really matter because we're where we are. And I just found that interesting. It's a great production on this one.
Rock and roll rules my soul, pushing everything and everyone to one side. But when it all grows old, the chill's still cold when I sing with my sweet guitar.
Yeah, this is way more powerful. I like the drums stepping up during this section. I like the organ being layered in there. I don't recall if there was an organ on the other version. If so, I didn't even notice it. So there's that. But this sounds really good. I like this version better, I think.
When I sing with my sweet guitar. 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 When I sing with my sweet guitar.
Okay, so I went back and checked out the original again, and it definitely was slower, so that the demo version was much faster. Also, Lee wasn't writing the crash cymbal at all during the demo version. It was much more straightforward. And I don't know what kit he was playing on, but it wasn't his typical 5-piece. It couldn't have been, because there was a lot more going on melodically with the drums than we hear from him normally. That was kind of cool, actually. That's a little bit more the way that I like to play. I like to have some different tom sizes to put in some melodic choices. And that's exactly why. So you can do things like what he did in the demo version of this song. Also, I did not hear an organ. So I that explains why I didn't pick up on it, because I don't think it's there. That must have been Ken playing one of the other guitars then instead of organ. But in any case, this is a good song. I liked the original song, but the unreleased version, but I actually like the demo better. I think the dynamics are better. It's a tighter song for me. Just my opinion, But and part of that, to be fair, is probably the mix, because I do not like the mix on the unreleased version, and I do like the mix on the demo version. It's a lot more clear, but the style is different too. So, you don't have the things that I was saying muddy up a song, just don't exist in the demo version. It's a much more straightforward rock and roller. So that's just my personal preference. But, good song. I'm glad that we get to hear it. I'm glad I have two different versions to flip back and forth from, because you never know what I'm in the mood to hear. On the rare time I actually listen to music outside of working on it. But great song, guys. So we've got a couple more before we're wrapping up with High and Mighty. I'll be back on Monday to start working on those other unreleased songs. I hope that you guys have a fantastic weekend. Depending on where you are in the world, it's either getting warmer or it's getting colder. Depends on whether you're north or south of the equator. But in any case, here in Las Vegas, it is definitely springtime. We're already headed into the 90s, which means the hundreds are not far behind. Thank God I live most of my life at home and I don't have to go out in it anymore. You guys take care. Have a wonderful weekend. Do something fun for yourselves and do something good for someone else. We'll see you next week. Cheers. Thank you for joining me on this episode of Uriah Heep, the Magician's Podcast. If you have enjoyed this show, please consider going over to Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcast outlet, leaving a rating or a review. Be sure to subscribe to make sure that you are notified when new episodes are available. Please be sure to share this podcast with your fellow Uriah Heep enthusiasts and anyone who you think would like Uriah Heep, which should be everyone. And if you are so inclined, please feel free to contribute to the Patreon account. And if you are not a Patreon subscriber, you can also pay through the PayPal link on the website listed in the show links below. I would also like to thank Uriah Heep for their very generous support of the show, and thank you guys for listening. We'll see you in the next episode. Happy days!